I'm just going to be real with y'all. In this episode, I'm going to be giving you the encouragement and motivation that I need to hear right now. So this is a shorter episode than normal. It's going to be jam-packed with some real talk, real encouragement, real motivation, and probably overcoming some real limiting beliefs. And hear that it is not coming from a space of championing this. I have not figured this out. This is literally what I need to hear right now. Let's dive into today's episode. Have any of you ever struggled with feeling overwhelmed or feeling like there are way too many things that you are balancing? There's too many plates spinning in the air and you've just added more and more and more. And if any of them drop, it's going to be a colossal failure. Hopefully, I'm not the only one who feels that way in my life right now, but I definitely do. I had someone ask me a couple of weeks ago. I was having lunch with a friend, and we were just talking about life. And she said, "Kimberly, how do you do it? How are you a wife, a mom, a CEO, a podcast host, speaker, and a PhD student?" And I laughed and I said two things. I said, well, number one, I'm probably not doing any of them very well right now. And number two, I get a lot of sleep. Both of those are probably true. It was funny because she said, it's interesting. Like, you would think that most people would say sleep is what they're not getting if they have so many things that they have to do. But you all know me and hopefully have been students of this podcast long enough to know that I am incredibly passionate about sleep. If I wasn't getting enough sleep, which honestly, over the past week, I haven't been getting as much sleep as normal, which may be why I feel even more overwhelmed currently in my day-to-day life. But it's so important. It's so important to getting us to think more clearly, to be able to handle emotional situations better, and to just better physically handle the demands of our day-to-day life. But what do you do when it's just too much? You're spinning all the plates. You're running like a hamster on a hamster wheel, and it feels like you just keep saying to yourself, as soon as I'm done with this, then I'll get a break. As soon as I'm done with that project, then I'll rest. As soon as I'm done with this, then I'll get a vacation or take a vacation. But instead of actually saying no to anything new coming on, you just keep adding on. When that project ends, you don't take a break. You start something new. Are any of you feeling this way? Are any of you like this? Like I am? There's a group of us. I know that we are, and it's probably more of us than we would like to admit. It's interesting because in our culture and in our society, it is a badge of honor to be busy. But I've come to the point in my life where I resent myself saying that. I actually just got out off of a phone call with my mom, and she said, "Are you busy?" "I know you are. You're always busy." And I just cringed, and I thought, I don't want to always be busy. But I am. Like, something has to change in my schedule and in my life for me to stop being so busy. 2 days ago, my dad called and was wanting us to find a time to have lunch with someone. And as I said, I haven't been getting great sleep in the past couple of weeks, which for me looks like 7 hours. I've been getting 7 hours of sleep instead of my 8 hours, and I can already feel it affecting me. And it's because of the sun. The sun is rising more earlier than normal, I guess because we're getting into summer. My blackout curtains aren't working as effectively. And so as soon as I see that daylight coming in through the slivers of our blackout windows is when my body says it's time to get up, and I'm not getting my 8 hours of sleep, which is driving me crazy. But last week is when he called and said, or a couple days ago, he called and said, let's find a time. And I literally just about broke down in tears looking at my schedule and realizing, where's the time? I can't, there is no time. And it's the exact opposite of the life I want to live. Do any of you feel this way? You've taken on a lot of great things, but you're not able to fully invest yourself in any of them to the best way that you want to, because there's too many of them, and all of them are good, and all of them are worthy and right, and all of the good things. But where do you find that line? Where do I find that line? What would I tell myself if I took my situation, stepped outside of me, and spoke to me like I was my best friend? Because that's a tactic, right? That's one of the things, some of the therapies out there, the modalities of them, the thought is to speak to yourself in the way that a best friend would speak to you. And typically that's a prompting that's given to when we're really negative about ourselves, when we're having a lot of negative self-talk and negative self-thoughts. It's put yourself out of you being the person to respond to you, because we're our own worst critics, and instead talk to ourselves like it's a best friend. So some of the things that we could say that I'm thinking of myself is, I should be able to do all of this, or I've been terrible at setting boundaries, or I resent the fact that I'm not setting boundaries, right? But if I were to just look at my situation and speak to me like I was my best friend, what would I say to myself? What would I say to a best friend who came to me and said, I'm overwhelmed. There's too much on my plate. It's all good stuff, but I don't know what to do. Here's what I would say to that person. I would say, okay, let's talk about what else is going on. Let's just get a list first. Let's have a conversation. Write down, what are all of the things that you do? What are all of the things that are taking your energy? Maybe it's not even things you're doing. Maybe it's also things you're thinking of or thinking about that are taking your mental capacity. Take the next couple of days and be proactive. Be really mindful of what you're spending your time on. And if I were to do that, then my list would probably end up looking like I check a lot of email. I check a lot of Slack. I don't really check a lot of Instagram until the evenings when my husband comes to me and says, I sent you 12 Instagram reels for you to look at today. Go check them. And it's all funny things. So that's fun. What else do I do? I definitely take time for my workouts and my Zone 2 training, which I do both of those every single day. And then what else do I do? There comes a point in the day where I'm in a lot of meetings, actually. Before I get into that, my schedule is just full of meetings in the space that I am right now. And then there's things on my to-do list. I have homework that I have to do for classes that I'm in. I have edits to chapters for my dissertation that I have to make currently right now. I sleep. I need to make time for sleep. But you'll notice what I haven't said yet is spending time with my kids, uninterrupted, no distractions, and spending time with my husband, uninterrupted and no distractions. The two most important things to me in my earthly relationship, my family and my husband, my kids, but even my mom, my dad, my extended family. So those relationships that are incredibly important to me weren't even the things that I listed when I was going through it. So to me, right then and there, I see a problem I see an opportunity for growth. Let's just put a pin in it. We're going to come back to that. The other thing that I didn't mention is my time in the Word, my time with God. And if I actually were to be honest with myself and with you all, over the past month, maybe even 3 months, I have not done a great job at reading my Bible every morning, which is something I did and have done for the past several years of my life. Every morning is my morning routine. Why has that changed? Let's put a pin in that. We're going to come back. So if I was the best friend asking this then and going through this, okay, great. So we have a list. What have you noticed from that list? What of these things that you're doing are bringing life to you? And which of these things are you doing that are draining you? Now, which of these things are you doing that are draining you, but they are important for a reason. Like there's something that for whatever reason, and not trying to be overly justifying, but for whatever reason you absolutely need to be a part of right now. But what are some of these things that are draining you that actually you could stop doing and it wouldn't be the end of the world? And there would probably be some come to Jesus moments about that, where I would really assess the meetings that I'm in, where I would really assess why I check my email and Slack so much. Probably because I feel so overwhelmed with everything on my plate that it's an easy distraction to keep me from working on some bigger tasks because the tasks altogether feel too overwhelming. So that could be something else. But of course, the biggest opportunity, which I mentioned earlier, that I would see from taking that time assessment of myself would be the most important things in my life, the things I say are the priorities in my life, are the things that are seemingly getting the back burner or falling by the wayside. So then if I was the best friend, I would likely say to myself, or that person, if I was the best friend talking to the person struggling with this, then I would say, great. So what would it look like to change your schedule, to change your priorities, to change your day-to-day so that you're filling your cup up with the things that are your first priorities and everything else has to be submissive to that? What would that look like? Man, mentally there might be a lot of justification in my head of why I can't do that, why that's not possible, why for X, Y, and Z reasons I have to keep doing exactly what I'm doing now. And a lot of those answers would be out of fear. Well, I have to keep doing all of these meetings because if I don't, it's all going to fail. Things are all going to fall apart if I'm not in all of these meetings that I need to be in. Or if we're going to be real, I need to be in these meetings because people expected me to be there. There's an expectation of me to be there, and maybe I didn't push back on it, or maybe I didn't clarify, do you really need me there, or anything like that. And so there's a lot being taken from me that I'm allowing to be taken from me because I think it's what people expect of me. And maybe at the core of that is some people pleasing. And it might come down to, here's a great example. So my husband and I, we volunteer at our church at the First Time Guest Tent. And it's honestly something I love to do. However, because I'm in a very high stress period in my life right now, as with many of the things that I've mentioned, my husband and I are also small group leaders at our church. And so we do that on Sunday evenings as well. And so just having another thing that's added to the plate, which is a good thing. But if it's another thing where I'm doing it because I feel like it's expected of me, or because I'm not wanting to hurt someone's feeling by saying we need to take a break for a season, then we keep doing it. But if I'm at a place in my life where really I need some rest in areas where I don't absolutely need to be, then it's not being helpful for me in that season. And that's what I've really struggled with, because I was talking to someone a couple of weeks ago and I was like, does it ever, and I just asked them, I said, does it ever feel like it's too much to serve, every other Sunday? And they responded and they said, no, I've never felt that way. And I thought, man, I shouldn't feel the way I feel because other people don't feel that way. I just need to, stuff it down, buckle up, get it to happen, keep serving. Like, it's a good thing to do. Got to keep doing it. But if I'm going to be real, even just having the ability to mentally for a period of time, take that expectation off of me while I'm focusing on getting some other areas of my life reprioritized and taking a break, taking a respite from that, even just mentally, not even the physical demand of that thing, but the mental demand of that thing it allows space to start freeing up. And if we get back to what are we solving for? What am I solving for right now in this time of my life? I'm solving for the fact that I feel overwhelmed. Bottom line, that is how I feel. And over the past several weeks, it has begun to manifest in increased anxiety, which I had really done a good job at getting into pretty good wraps. I feel like I've been managing my anxiety really well lately, but in the past couple of weeks, that's reared its head again. It's looking like I'm not sleeping well. It's looking like I become more emotional quicker in my day-to-day life because, again, all of these things are domino effects. And it's looking like I'm overwhelmed because I'm literally overwhelmed. There are a lot of things on my plate. So if that's what I'm trying to solve for, then I can't justify keeping everything on my plate. I have to find a way to decrease what's on my plate. Our time can't be bigger. We can't, if we think of a plate like 24 hours in a day is a plate, I can't make that plate bigger. And I could actually make that plate smaller depending on how I use the time on it, but I can't make that plate any bigger. The only thing I can do is intentionally focus on how I fill my plate to the best way possible. And for me, historically, what that's looked like is I pile the plate as high as it can get, like at a buffet, because I love to eat. So I take that plate and I take it and I try and get as much on that plate as I can because that's how to get the most bang for your buck. And so in some ways, I've viewed myself as kind of that workhorse, that I am only as good as what I produce. I am only as good as what I do. And this is something that God has been trying to break me of, for several years now. I'm just now realizing this. This is a recurring theme in my life. The recurring theme is I feel like I am as good as what I do. And that is manifesting in my schedule being too full and my work-life balance being completely off and not knowing what to say no to. So maybe a question I would ask myself is, what is a different belief I could have other than I am only as good as what I produce, or I am only as good as what I do? Is that a helpful belief? No. It's a damaging belief. Is it true? No. I would be the only person in my life to even begin to believe that about me or about anyone else. So then what is the more helpful thought? That I am good and worthy no matter what I do? I don't know that rings true with me. That I am good not because of what I do, but because of who I am. So because of my belief system, I believe that in general, to all humanity, that Jesus loves each and every one of us as we are, for who we are, regardless of what we do. He did not die on the cross for us because we stopped sinning, because Romans tells us as we were still sinners, God died for us. Jesus died on the cross for us. There was nothing we did that got that to happen. It is the free gift of what Jesus has done. He believes I'm worthy simply because I exist, because I am made in his image. And as a person who lives in his image and is created in his image, does that mean that there are good works to do? Yes. Does my worth come from the works? No. But that is the thought that I stay enslaved to, that the worth comes from the works, but the worth comes from him. The worth comes from the word. The worth comes from not what I do. It's not what I do. Now, here's where it always breaks down for me, because I love to do And in many ways, I am wired to do. Like, I do believe there's a healthy aspect of my personality and the way I'm wired, which is, yes, like I am, I'm very fast paced. I can get things done quickly. And there are things I love to do. But when the worth has been tied into that, that's when it becomes a problem. When the worth comes from, and now I'm tying my self-esteem research back into this, I know that the contingencies of self-worth, that when people have their self-worth based in the fact that I am loved, when they see their family's love for them as being how they have their worth, seeing God's love for them as being where they get their worth, that is when they have the highest and most stable levels of self-esteem and well-being, versus people who find their worth in appearance, competitiveness, intellectual ability, or competition, like wanting to just continuing to want to win. People whose self-worth was more tied to those categories tended to have lower levels of stable self-esteem and less or lower levels of overall well-being as well. Okay. So I'm tying all of this together, y'all. Like, I'm having a conversation with myself to all of you, working through this process. So the fact that my worth at times is tied up in what I do, that's what the problem is, versus my worth, seeing how if I am good enough or believing that I'm good enough, when that is coming from something stable, which is external from me, not another person, especially in this case, God's love. Another point of research where that said was virtue. Being a person of virtue was also tended to be, so being a person of integrity, focusing more on not the volume of what you do, but the quality of who you are, your character, who you are becoming more than what you are doing. So when I really take time to think about that and then ask myself the question, who is it I want to become? Then maybe that would be a better guide and predictor and filter for what ends up on my calendar and what ends up taking my energy and what I give my time to. Who do I want to become? What's most important to me? I want to be a daughter of God. I want to know Scripture intimately. I want to be the kind of person who turns to prayer in moments of praise and in moments of turmoil. I want to be that person where that's my first response. So then where does that go on my schedule? I want to be best friends with my husband. I want to have amazing experiences with him. I want us to grow even closer in our marriage and have an impenetrable marriage from the forces that try to come against it. So where does that fit on my schedule? I want to be an incredibly present and undistracted mother. So what does that look like? Not working when I don't have to or need to, setting boundaries around my work schedule and putting my phone away at a certain time. Like when I'm done with work, why do I need my phone? Putting it up, doing fun things with the kids, playing basketball. My son's really into basketball right now. And it works well because my husband and I just finished watching The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan series, the docu-series. And I'm all about basketball right now. Not that I can play, but like I just picture Michael Jordan and, how much grit and determination he had, and filter my inner Michael Jordan while I play basketball with my son, which is super fun. Or it's even just laying in bed. One of the things I have tried to start doing more of in the past month is when tucking the kids in bed, just laying down in their bed with them, whether they're in the same bed that night or separate beds, and just spending 10, 15 minutes asking them questions, on top of, we usually do the prayer, read a book, things like that. But after that, just being in there with them for a period of time. And it's something I've really enjoyed doing, and they've really enjoyed as well. But the question is how is my schedule and my energy, the things I spend my energy on a day-to-day basis, is it aligning with the person I want to be? And there is work. And the thing is, I love what I do. And it's good things. And I do believe that the work that I do is something that I have been called to, and there's a much higher purpose in it. But the question is not, do I work or not? Or, should I be working or not? The question for me in that is, am I using my best and highest skill set and ability in the work that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis? Or am I allowing my energy to be drained by things that I don't really need to be a part of? Am I getting into things I don't need to be a part of because falling into old habits, or just being pulled into fires, or not empowering other people to be able to handle situations that I don't need to handle? How can I free up some of these other things on my schedule so that I can be more productive in my day-to-day? And the why for that, the important why for that, is I want to be the most effective I can be during those quote unquote 9 to 5 hours. But the reason why, other than, of course, the reason why I want to be productive in those 9 to 5 hours is because I want to help save marriages and strengthen families and help people become the best versions of themselves that they can be, and to live in all that God has called them to be. And that is what drives me day in and day out. The problem becomes when that overtakes my own family. And that's what can't happen for me or for you. So what should I do? If I was my best friend, here's what I would say. I would say you need to put boundaries, fences around your work hours. And that's your time to be present with your work, present with your team, present with the people that you serve, and do it as well as you can. But when 5 o'clock comes, turn it off. Go home, spend that time with your family, spend that time with your kids, and bonus points for being able to carve out some brunch times with the family, lunch times, sneak in an hour at the pool over the summer for while the kids are home. Bonus points for doing that throughout the day. But don't rob your family because your schedule is too demanding. Family is first. Schedule the family, schedule God, schedule all of those things first. And if the other things can't fit into that time, then it's not the right things that I'm focused on. I realize that as I'm talking through this, I am in a position where I do have a bit more control over which meetings I go to in my schedule. And you may be a stay-at-home mom, a stay-at-home dad. You may be someone who can't necessarily say no to meetings or question while you're there, but maybe you could ask some clarifying questions of, is this something I do that I really need to be in? Is this the best and highest use of my time? If you're the stay-at-home parent, maybe your question is, how can I actually find something to pour myself into outside of pouring into my family so that I can feel like I'm having an impact in a different area? If that's something you want to have an impact in. I don't know what the conversation is for you, but the overarching theme, I hope, is something helpful. What is your goal? And if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you were to take a look at your schedule, what would your schedule tell you? How would you go through thinking about why you've scheduled things and prioritized things the way that you've had? What is the underlying belief that you have about yourself that's leading you to feel overwhelmed? How can you question that belief? How can you shift that belief? How can you find something that's a more helpful thought, a more helpful belief And how can that shift the way that you then view your schedule and put boundaries around your time and focus on what you pour into and maybe what you decide to not pour into. And so for me, as I've been talking with you, thank you for talking with me about this for the past couple of minutes. But as I've been talking through this, I have some encouragement and I have some clarity. It's a reminder that my worth is not in what I do. And the more I do, the more worthy I am is not true. The more I do, the more overwhelmed I am. The less present I am. The less engaged I am. The less of a wife I am, the less of a mom I am in being present for my family and my kids and my religion, my relationship with God. So what has to change? And that's the thing I'm going to still have to work through and try and figure out a better answer to. But it's helpful to know where the source of some of those unhelpful beliefs are, a bit of a path that can be worked towards to begin to see change, realizing it's not all going to change overnight, but perhaps the first and most important thing that needs to change for any change to happen is my underlying belief about the whole thing. So what is it for you? What are your underlying beliefs that are keeping you overwhelmed, keeping you saying yes to things that you don't want to say yes to, but you feel like you have to for some reason? What's that reason that you keep giving more of yourself than you can? Who's the person you want to be? And how can you create, to the extent that you can, your schedule and your focuses throughout your day to become that person? I hope this episode has been helpful for you. If you have enjoyed it, I would love to hear from you. It's definitely a different type of episode, and honestly, just me working through a lot of things I've been going through recently. Another thing I'd add to my list is get more sleep, because that helps everything, and it will help you as well. But I would love to hear from you. Thank you for listening. Share this with a friend. Until next week, stay strong.